Hello, all you beautiful souls. Thanks for joining me for another edition of Operation Tango Romeo, the trauma recovery podcast for veterans, first responders, and their families. As the show grows, I have more and more people reaching out to me to hop on the show and have a conversation, and I'm getting more and more discerning. It's getting difficult to keep it down to just one or two a week, as I have been doing for the last 5 years. So it's got to be a pretty good pitch to get you on the show. And Jeff Kibble is now on the show because it was a pretty good pitch. And today we're going to get to know Jeff, his service, his work with wounded warriors, and his new foray into politics that he's attempting. Jeff, thanks for joining me today.
Morning, Mark. Nice to meet you, and thank you for the kind introduction.
So, why in the world did you join the Navy? You spent 28 years there. That's a long time. Why the Navy? Why service in general?
My grandfather served in World War II, and he was really my inspiration to join the military. He was in the Air Force, and I thought I'd pick a senior service and go for Navy. I just grew up sailing and loved boats, and spent a lot of time as a young person on the waters of British Columbia. And navigation and boats and ships spoke to me, so I chose the Navy. And why 28 years? Well, I joined, and it seemed to fly by, and I sort of felt like I'd been in the Navy for 4 or 5 years, and all of a sudden I was looking at the end of a full career.
Well, you got to do something for a living. You got to do something to keep the wolf away from the door. Navy's so interesting to me because of all the different places that you can go. Did you get to any cool ports? Probably Hawaii a few times.
Very much. Hawaii was almost a second home port. But I did deploy all over the world and been to almost every continent. We didn't make it to the Antarctic, but I think I've been to all the other continents, and some amazing trips, some amazing deployments. And one trip we actually encircled the globe completely over the course of the deployment. So I can attest to the fact that the world is actually round. It's a sphere for sure. Having gone all the way around, it
was all an illusion. You were fooled.
You
just went in a circle.
Yeah, well, from my perspective, it was certainly a sphere, and we even crossed the equator at the international date line, exactly there, and which was kind of a cool. If you're a navigation nerd like myself, then that was kind of a significant.
Isn't there a special thing you do in the Navy when you cross the equator or the date line?
There's a crossing the line ceremony, and we certainly participated in that. It's actually quite a positive event, despite a few negative connotations. But yeah, it was pretty cool to be able to do that. I think I've probably crossed the equator 6 or 7 times during my career.
It must be neat as you see the stars change as you're moving slowly.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the first time we saw the Southern Cross, and so that's a pretty special constellation that you obviously don't see here in the northern part of the waters. So
I wonder how far do you have to be south of the equator before the Southern Cross, or just close to the equator?
In my defense, I've been retired for 7 or 8 years, so I can't answer that question when it starts to become visible. You'd have to ask a real astronomer to answer that one for you.
Well, I just thought you were looking up.
Yeah, I don't remember when you start where you start seeing the Southern Cross. How far south you have to go.
My wife and I were in Bora Bora a couple of years ago, and
nice.
Tahiti, Bora Bora, first time south of the equator, and that was neat. We spent a lot of time on the deck just looking up,
Amazing.
And it's like, these are all different stars. These are not what we're used to at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
And hey, flat earthers, explain that one.
Exactly.
If the Earth is flat, it would be the same damn stars.
It would be.
Wouldn't have changed.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a reasoning for everything, but I'm still convinced the world is a sphere.
I'm pretty sure. Although I've done a couple of episodes where I talk about flat earthers in particular, not to make fun of them, but because if you can't have a conversation with a flat earther, then you can't have a conversation.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Like, it's a great litmus test. If you can't keep your smirking and your, if you can't stay in your adult ego state while talking to a flat earther and actually ask genuine questions, not mocking, not trying to do gotchas or being a dick, but genuinely trying to understand, like, where's your head at, man? Like, what are the arguments for this?
Yeah, I agree.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say there's nothing wrong with having different opinions, and I think communication and open conversation is the way to go. So I agree with what you're saying, and there's people that have all kinds of different beliefs, but absolutely being able to listen and understand and accept people have different beliefs despite your own personal experience.
Well, I've done this thought experiment myself, and I've spoken with people that are flat earthers, or
Mm-hmm.
there's all kinds of other theories about, it's concave, it's hollow, who
Right.
knows.
Yeah.
But some of the arguments are actually a bit of head scratchers, and I don't have a way to. I'll give you the one example.
Sure.
They talk about in Holland, there's these long canals.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a certain formula for, say, you have a 10-foot tall boat,
Mm-hmm.
and the canal should be flat if it's a flat Earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you just float it down the canal until you can't see it anymore because it's behind the curvature of the Earth.
Right.
And then you put on binoculars and you can still see it where you shouldn't be able to still see it. And because when it looks like it's going below the horizon, it's actually just going beyond your ability to see. And then you pick up the binoculars and you can still see it. So that one's a bit of a head scratcher. Like, how is that happening? Like, if it's actually past the formula,
Mm-hmm.
where you shouldn't be able to see it because of the curve, but I don't think they got the formula right, because
Yes. Well, fair enough.
I think that's all it is just bad math.
Potentially, it's a compelling argument, but I know from being at sea with on the ships, we have big, huge, powerful binoculars, and you can see a ship disappear over the horizon, not just getting smaller, which it of course does,
Yeah.
but you get to a point where you can only see the superstructure, and then you can only see the mast. So, and there's a simple formula for calculating those distances. So maybe there's some other compelling reason in the canals why that happens, but fair enough. If someone has figured and worked that out, I can understand.
At sea, did you ever have any super scary experiences? Like, I've never heard of a Navy boat ever sinking, but I mean, other than battle, of course, but I've never heard it sinking because of weather. But what's some of the nastiest weather you've ever been on a boat?
Well, I think that the worst storm I ever was in the early 1990s. I was on a ship called HMCS Fraser. It's long retired. I don't want to say how old I am, but
Was it a frigate, or?
it was one of the old destroyers, Saint Laurent class
Okay.
destroyers. And so I was a junior officer. I'd been in for a couple of years, and we were crossing the North Atlantic in a big NATO exercise, simulating the convoys, sort of World War II style. And we were escorting merchant ships, and we were dispatched way out ahead of the task force, and we're searching for submarines. And a big, huge storm was coming. We kept doing our mission and patrolling back and forth, and then we were calling out. And this is pre-modern satellite communications, and we were calling the task force saying, there's a storm coming, and weren't getting any answers. And we ended up riding out the storm, only to find out the rest of the task force had hidden in Norwegian fjords, and we were kind of forgotten. And we were pounding away in this incredible storm. And there were a few points I didn't think the ship would come back up from some of the waves. And it got so bad, one of the mess deck, the deck split apart, and you could, had fuel coming out of the fuel tanks up into the mess deck, and the bulkheads were starting to wrinkle, and you could see from one compartment through to the next. So it was pretty dicey, and eventually we made it into the UK and had to effect repairs. To weld everything back together. So it was a fairly old ship by then, but that was pretty traumatic storm.
When's the last time we got a new boat?
Well, the frigates are, I like to think, were brand new because they came out during my career, but now they're approaching 30 something years old. They are excellent, the ships that they have. But the new AOPS, or the Arctic Offshore Patrol Vessels, are just coming online right now. So they're the first two are in the water, I believe, and the rest are coming.
On each coast?
They're dispersing them between the coasts, yeah.
Okay. So I've never known. I've been on one of the boats because I was posted in Esquimalt with the 3rd Battalion PPCLI.
Yeah.
Back in the day. The legendary.
What years was that?
92. I was posted there in 92, 93.
Okay, I was in Esquimalt in those years. Absolutely.
You and I didn't get into a bar fight, did we?
Probably not. I didn't get in a lot of bar fights, and I always respected those in the army, of course.
Actually, I don't think I ever did get in a bar fight with the Navy guys, but those things did happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The Tudor house burnt down, though.
It did. Yeah, it was. That was a favorite watering hole of the Esquimalt fleet and the PPCLI that were there, and it was a fantastic location. And sadly it burned down. That was quite a few years ago. They built a liquor store there now.
What a shame!
I believe it bears the same name. But I did find out that the building was so old, the Tudor house, that it had still apparently had straw insulation in the walls, and that is partly attributed to the fire. It was deemed an accident or a accidental fire, and part of it was the old construction. The whole thing disappeared fairly quickly, and fortunately, no one was there and no one was hurt. So that was.
It was probably an insurance fire.
Nah, well.
Can't afford the renovations. Let's knock over a lantern.
I don't know about that. It certainly was deemed an accident, so I'll leave it at that.
Well, I'm not a fire investigator, but it's funny. So were you on the West Coast for the entire 28 years?
No, I served in Kingston for a little bit and also in Halifax, a couple of postings there. But predominantly, most of my career was based out of Esquimalt, of course, away at sea a lot. On various ships, but mostly in Esquimalt. So I spent my adult life on Vancouver Island mostly.
Did you ever sail out of the Halifax Harbor?
I did sail out of Halifax Harbor, yeah. That's where the Fraser was based, I was telling you about earlier. So I sailed on a couple of ships, Fraser and Gatineau on the East Coast, both decommissioned. But and I did the ORO course as well, which is a year-long course that's done out of Halifax. So know that harbor well.
What are the different classifications of boats in our Navy? Like, what do we actually have, and what's the difference between a frigate and a destroyer? I don't even know.
Well, a frigate is bigger ship, and so the frigates we have right now, and you can assign a name. Really, the frigates are almost guided missile cruisers, depending on how you want to classify them. But destroyers are typically smaller. Frigates and cruisers are bigger, and then we have the supply ships. So Protector, which is bigger. I was the navigator of Protector for a couple of years, and that's a special qualification for navigating a large ship. And I went on to be combat officer on that ship as well. And I liked the big ship, and navigating Protector. It was an excellent challenge, and it really appealed to me. And I guess that I would call that my second favorite ship in the fleet. My favorite was HMCS Oriole, which is the sail training ship. And I commanded that for 5 years, which was a real blessing. And it was an amazing job, a mix of public relations and community outreach, but also we sailed the ship offshore. And believe it or not, it's actually probably the most dangerous ship to sail on, unless there's a war. When you're sailing a big sail ship offshore, it is dangerous and risky. You're working with lines under incredible pressure with the massive sails, and you're often the upper decks are partly underwater and waves breaking over the deck, and so it's a real rugged hands-on experience, which I absolutely reveled in sailing on that ship.
Oh, so much history! I didn't even know we had anything like that.
Yeah, it was a 100-year-old sailing ship that the Navy acquired. It was donated by a liquor baron in Toronto in the 1950s. It was donated to first the Sea Cadets, and then eventually the Navy took over. And in 1956, it came out to Esquimalt, and it sailed as part of the fleet. So it's the oldest, and it still is the longest commissioned and the oldest ship in the Navy. And think of it as the snowbirds of the Navy. So that does that same type of mission.
That's super cool. When you're in the ocean, is it the bigger the better when it comes to the ship that you're on?
I suppose it depends what you're looking for, but for me, a 100-foot sailing ship's probably more exciting than.
Well, okay, as far as fun, I mean, but as far as enduring rough seas.
Bigger is generally better. So a protector, when I was on board there, that's about an 80,000 ton ship. It's much more comfortable at sea in rough weather. And yes, I certainly remember refueling destroyers, and it was fairly stable and comfortable where we were up on the tanker. And you look down, and when you're refueling the destroyers, and they're pounding away alongside and burying their bow under the waves. So there's, it's a very good graphic demonstration of the difference between size in choppy seas.
Our family's going on a cruise to Honduras and leaving December 12th.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never been at sea before.
Mm-hmm.
Any tips for seasickness? Because I am brutal.
There's no real rules to seasickness. There's people that just are chronic seasick, and they just look at a boat and they get sick. And there's other people that never get sick, and then all of a sudden they do out of the blue. So tips, if it gets rough, just look at the horizon. You'll get acclimatized to it fairly quickly. And if you end up getting sick, that's probably the best way to recover, is let it clear your system, and you'll feel better after, and you'll feel terrible during. It's actually a pretty horrible feeling to be seasick. It really is incapacitating. There's a few medications. Gravel always helps. It makes you a little bit sleepy, but gravel is a good way to help get past.
Apparently they got those sea bands. It's like a little pressure point.
Yeah.
Don't know if they work or not.
I've tried, and it certainly doesn't work for me, and it isn't very practical. But there are people that use them to much success. So,
do you ever get used to it? Like if you're prone to seasickness, does it ever just go away, or do you just got to power through?
In general, most people, if you do get a little bit seasick, and then after a little bit, you'll start. After a couple of hours, you'll start to feel better. That's typical, but there's no rules, and there's certainly people who have been classified chronic seasick. It doesn't matter what they do and what they're just sick the whole time. And so it'd be pretty tough to be a sailor and be like that. But
it must be that new sailors find out that they're chronic seasick, and then they just got to leave the Navy or take a different posting.
Avoid sea postings, or some guys just battle through. I met a few people, and hats off to them, who just were sick all the time, and they just did their best to deal with it. But a pretty miserable way to go. But yeah, there are a few people that do that.
Yeah, that is brutal. So the Wounded Warriors run. How'd you get involved? Like, how'd you hear about that, and why'd you get involved?
It was a team that worked on Vancouver Island. They started out with a couple of guys. I can't even remember what year, but about 2010, maybe 2011. Two guys decided just on their own to run the length of Vancouver Island to bring awareness for PTSD, and to visit the Legions, and to fundraise and contribute to Wounded Warrior Canada. And it actually started out as just these two guys. They weren't part of the event. And it sort of started growing from there. So when I got involved, I had retired, and I understood some of the challenges that veterans face. My wife's a veteran, and she has some mental health challenges, myself as well. And I just saw these guys running, and I liked running, and I found it as a way to, and I still do. I run for my, I should probably run more than I do, but I do run for my own well-being, and I find it a way to escape and to focus and relax my brain. So I really connected with the team when I saw them running, and I knew one or two of the runners, and so I volunteered. And the first year that I did it, I volunteered to be their PR coordinator and assist with media relations with the team. And my wife came as well, and she helped out with some of the logistics. But I was also a backup runner, and I ended up getting to run a lot of the legs of the race, or not the race, but of the event. So the team goes from Port Hardy to Victoria, and when I did it, it was 7 days, and we ran every day. You ran about a half kilometer each, a half marathon each. And so between the 6 runners, we collectively ran the length of the island. And then the second year I did it, it was really, I must say, a very powerful and rewarding event, both personally and then as you are able to connect with veterans up and down the island and show them, hey, we can do something. The second year, I also assisted with public relations, and I was a full-time runner with the team. So it really meant a lot to me, and I just did those 2 years, and other veterans have had a chance to run, and they now started including first responders and in the ilk of the runners, and it's grown and grown. And I think the last year, I don't know the number, but they were into the hundreds of thousands of dollars that they raised. And the year that I did it, the event went from just a couple local guys running, and it got officially became a Wounded Warrior Canada event. So it was nice to be part of that, and it's nice to see in the years since I've done it that it's just been more and more successful and grown and spread a very important message.
So the funds typically go to Wounded Warrior programs then?
So they always have all the funds have gone to Wounded Warrior. The difference being that the year that I was involved, is when it became an official event or part of the Wounded Warrior organization. But yes, all the funds raised go to those programs, that very excellent programs that Wounded Warrior runs.
So what is it about mental health that's near and dear to you? Why would you commit so much time and effort towards it?
A couple of reasons, and an excellent question. As I said, my wife and I are both veterans, and we both have some challenges with OSIs that we're dealing with. But there's others who are also struggling and having a tougher time, I think, than we are. And I see the challenges, and I see what some of the solutions are, and just communicating and letting people know they're not alone is the first step. It's not a be all end all solution, but it's part of a solution moving forward. And if veterans are having trouble, they know they can reach out and speak to somebody. They see a team like that overcoming some challenges and connecting as a group, as you and I know, in a way that military, as brothers and sisters can do.
Do you have shipmates that have died by suicide?
I do, yeah.
Do you have an idea about how many that you've seen over all those years?
I know of just a few, and there's many sailors that you lose connection with over time, and not quite sure what happened to them, and every now and then you hear. But there has been a few cases that have touched our lives from people within the military, and I have some close friends who are firefighters as well, and in that service as well, that affects them. So there's some people I've known through there that have sadly taken their lives. Yeah.
Anybody ever take their life while they're on the boat?
It has happened, yeah. Years ago, it was a gentleman, I didn't know his name, a young sailor that had hung himself on board the ship. And it was pretty heartbreaking and affects the crew very much, yeah.
Anybody just jump over the side?
That has happened on occasion. I don't know any personal cases of that. And usually it's never really sure if it was accidental or intentional. It's really a challenge to tell, but either way, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Well, that's typically the impetus that gets a lot of people into this space. Fundraising and raising awareness is losing friends. On our tour, I was in Croatia in '94.
Yeah.
And one of the guys who I just saw a few days prior got a Dear John letter, and that on top of the horrors of war, it was just too much. And he stuck a grenade down his flak vest, and bits and pieces all over the place.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. That's heartbreaking, and I think a lot of us are driven, like you are with your program, is to reach out and communicate and share resources, and even just knowing that there's a voice there. And as we I like to say, do a buddy check, reach out to your friends if you haven't heard them for a while, and just say, hey, how's it going? How are you? And I think that often can help people.
One of the things that I have found in this space is that people use euphemisms. They don't. They say, "Well, struggling with mental health," but they don't actually articulate what that is. Why it is that an operational stress injury, which is PTSD, which more accurately is a PTSI.
Yeah, I agree.
I just realized recently that, even though I know it's a neurological injury, I've been saying that for years, but just call it brain damage, because that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's actual brain damage. And I think there's something about being very, very clear with what it is. Yes, I have brain damage from from my job.
Yep.
From the service. It caused me brain damage.
Mm-hmm. I received a significant blow to my head, and it's caused brain damage.
It doesn't matter what type of brain damage it is, whether it's concussive or it's from a traumatic event or a series of traumatic event or bullying.
Yeah.
All these things you can see in a brain scan. You can see the damage that's done to your brain, and the symptoms line up almost exactly, no matter how you got the injury. The symptoms line up, and everything from problems with your digestive system, which is why I don't think I could be a truck driver, because I need to be like no more than 2 minutes from a bathroom. More than 2 minutes, no damned way. I can't do it.
Yeah, understand.
And that is common with brain injuries.
Yeah.
Don't know why, but it is. And anxiety, being able to control emotions in general, good emotions and bad emotions, impulse control. It's why I don't drink. I've been sober for almost 5 years.
Excellent.
And because I got no impulse control to start with. So a couple of drinks and instant idiot, just add alcohol.
Yeah, fair enough. And I understand. I drink a little wine with dinner, and I limit it to that. For all kinds of reasons, the ones that you've mentioned, and just for general health as well. So I do enjoy a glass of wine, and I do drink coffee as well. Those are sort of a couple of vices, but you certainly, it affects your physical operation as well as your mental operation of your body, and I 100% agree with what you're saying about brain scans can actually show a change in the brain from the different types of injuries.
You got out 20 years after I did. You're about 2015, right, when you got out?
2016, yeah. Good math.
So in 20 years difference, when you got out, was it still a culture of drinking well, I mean, you can speak to the Navy. It sure was in the Army, but in the Navy, was it still very much a drinking culture?
It had changed over the duration of my career for the positive. I know when I first joined as a young sailor and pretty impressionable, and drinking was encouraged. It was there was just a lot of it. That's how the Navy always was, and I'm sure for Army and Air Force as well. Although I didn't participate in, I wasn't in the Army or the Air Force, but drinking was heavy in the Navy, and encouraged and just expected. It wasn't encouraged. It was just the way it was, and it slowly changed. And by the time I released, much better policies were in place. Some people were quite angry with the changes, but it brought health for people and well-being, and made the Navy more, I guess, just more operational. Right? People were the culture had shifted, I guess, is the best way to say. I think maybe there's some more areas that need improvements, but that was certainly a big one.
What people don't realize is that they think they're having a party, but really they're medicating. The party is the medication, and alcohol is a hell of a good medication. It just, the price tag is ridiculous. Like the death and destruction that alcohol has on lives is unbelievable. And yet it's just, oh, well, it's just booze. It's legal, so it's fine. And it's a drug, and it's one of the more destructive drugs. And that's probably more destructive because it is so socially acceptable. You see somebody drunk out of their mind, and and we just have a good laugh about it, and tell some stories and tease you the next day. You were so drunk. But if you're downtown and you see somebody hunched over because of fentanyl, oh, look at that druggie. Look at that crackhead.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, how's that different?
Very similar.
It's not different.
Yeah, it's very similar. Alcohol is highly addictive. So, people with challenges will use it to self-medicate. Absolutely agree. And that's when it can really become a problem. And yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's the problem. That's one of the reasons the Royal Canadian Legion is dying. Is the Legion was formed because of drinking culture, and it was supposed to be a place where war veterans could get together because you can only really relate with other people of a similar experience. War veterans getting together with the local lumberjacks or local tradesmen, it's not the same.
Right.
And they'd end up getting in fights because people want to challenge themselves with the combat veteran, and alcohol was being used as a medicine, whether they realized it or not. That's why they were drinking. It's why it's a good time. It's medicine.
Yeah.
And so if the Legion's supposed to be there for community, to get people together, for camaraderie, for fellowship, for brotherhood and sisterhood, and to support the troops, well, now we know better, so we should do better.
Mhm.
And alcohol is not getting together and getting blasted is not the right way to do it. It's not helping anything. You're just throwing gas on the fire.
Yeah.
And turn them all into health clubs or something, or medical clinics, or I mean something.
I'm not sure. I hear what you're saying. I'm a member of the Langford Legion, and I know different legions are healthier and have stronger memberships. Langford certainly does, because there's a lot of veterans retire on Vancouver Island, and
For sure.
the base is there. And there are people that have their drinking challenges and go to the Legion, and that's all they do. But that's not everybody that I see in the modern Legion, and it's certainly changed over the years. But Langford Legion does, I believe, a really good job fundraising and helping wounded warriors, and they run a shelter for veterans here. So they do some really good work in the Langford area. And I've certainly been involved with them. I often do the veteran outreach program for school kids during Remembrance Week. You go out and speak in schools and meet with kids and do presentations. So those are some of the good things that the Legion does. But
well, that's the problem. Like when we say the Legion, it's not really accurate, because there isn't the Legion. They're all individual branches, and some of them are fantastic. Like it's great to hear that Langford is healthy. I know the one in Merritt is healthy. The one in Jasper is fantastic. They are all like great templates for how to do it and how to do it well, how to be successful as an organization.
Yep.
And then you have all the others that are either closed or closing. I don't know what the numbers are for. I'd like to see what the actual numbers are for how many branches have been closing year after year, how many there were, and how many are still surviving. I just got a membership at the Stettler Legion, a 2-year membership, and it probably won't be there in 2 years, but I got the membership anyway.
Yeah.
It's so many are struggling, but I think it's because they have, most of them or many of them have lost sight of what they're there for. They're supposed to be a veteran support organization, and too many of them have turned into civilian private clubs.
Fair enough.
And I can't even tell you how many veterans have walked into Legion, stories that I've been told, where they were not welcome because they were veterans. It's like, well, this is supposed to be our little club. It's like, no, this is my house.
Yeah, I've heard of that happening in Legions. I've not experienced it. I will say when we did the Wounded Warrior run, we ran the length of the island, and we visited Legions along the way, sometimes a couple a day, and it was tough to see some of the smaller ones that were struggling with membership. But I am happy to see the ones that are embracing the support veteran message and mission. And so happy to see that Langford is one of the stronger ones, and I'm happy to hear you name a bunch of other legions you've experienced that are doing good work.
Yeah, some of them are crushing it. They're doing great. And Northwest Command is actually where I started my healing journey. It was calling them when I decided, holy crap, I cannot do this on myself. I've been trying and I'm failing, and I need actual help.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought to call them first, but I did, and they were great. they got the ball rolling, got the claims going with VAC, and away we go. So thank God for them.
Yeah,
That was Northwest Command in Calgary.
I'm happy to hear that, and that shows that just reaching out sometimes is all that's needed if you can connect with the right people that are there to listen and support.
Well, I hear all the time, and it was certainly my experience, where picking up that it was like a thousand pound telephone. Like, it was so
Yeah,
hard to make that first call,
of course.
and a lot of that is what the show is about. The more we talk about things and just be very upfront and matter of fact about things, the less there's stigma. The less there's stigma, the less that phone weighs, and it's easier to reach out for help that first time. It's because of pride and because of stigma that people are dying. Stigma kills.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so we have to have these conversations and be very frank and open and honest and transparent, or people die. It's just that simple. And it's a big reason why I do the show.
Amen. I hear and agree with what you're saying, and I think you're part of that solution. I've watched a bunch of your episodes, and you help break that down and share that message, and so you're part of the solution, and I think that's amazing.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate that. Well, I'm going to be testifying again in Ottawa at the
Hmm.
Standing Committee of Veterans Affairs. I've always gone on off bullet points. I'm not going to do that this time. I'm actually going to write it out, so make sure I stay within the 5 minute
Of course.
time limit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we'll see if I can't make a dent this time. And just talking about the pros and cons of VAC, what they're doing well, what they're not doing well.
Hmm.
But the fact that I have to have this show because nobody else is doing it. Well, why am I doing this? VAC shouldn't be doing this,
Yeah.
But they're not, and they're sure not funding me.
Yeah. Fair enough. And
So you've decided to continue to serve, and why politics? So what's been your path into politics up to this point, and what are your ambitions?
that's another excellent question, and so we're stacking up the great questions today. I loved my career, and embraced the challenges and embraced the good, and I was happily retired for 7-ish years, and I spent time being a father because I had been away for a lot of that time in the Navy. I was away at sea a lot, and I took up Filipino martial arts. I started to learn about hunting. I continued running, and I got a lot of solace in that. And I volunteered with the Wounded Warrior Run, as we talked about earlier, and helped veterans with dealing with VAC, which can sometimes be a challenge to navigate that process, especially for veterans who are struggling. And I was enjoying being retired, but I think our country needs a new direction and a new change in leadership. And when I was at sea and serving, my job was to protect the freedoms and democracy of our country, and to support our trade and communications and reputation with other countries. That was a small part we played when I was in uniform, and I feel compelled to continue doing that, but out of uniform, which is why I decided, after being asked many times, I finally found myself in a place earlier in the fall this year to seek to become a candidate for the Conservative Party.
So are Conservatives as rare as hen's teeth on Vancouver Island?
They were absolutely. Vancouver Island is predominantly been an NDP bastion with a strong smattering of the federal Green Party. However, my personal beliefs, I tend to align more with the traditional Conservative policies, and so that's why I have chosen to follow that path. So I live in Langford, British Columbia. So the riding I'm in is Cowichan, Malahat, Langford, and I'm one of 3 candidate applicants, and we're going to face a vote, an internal party vote shortly, to pick which of us will be that candidate moving forward. So hopefully we can have some more Conservative seats on Vancouver Island for a little more balance here going forward.
I would imagine being a conservative in Langford would be a lot like being a liberal in Alberta. Not a lot of warm welcomes.
Maybe in the past, but Langford is a pretty vibrant population center. It's I think third largest on Vancouver Island, and there's lots of businesses and taxpayers and like-minded people. There's lots of veterans and active military, and actually people are very open to change and conservative values here. And people's attitudes are changing a little bit, and they're not liking the direction the country's going. So it's I think we're going to see some change going forward.
I think the longer our prime minister hangs on, it just refuses to allow an election to happen, so that Jagmeet and his buddies can get their pensions, which I can't really fault them for. I don't think I would do anything different. I'd try to stretch things out. If I had to stretch things out for a year just so I can get my pension, probably would. I think most people would.
Fair enough.
So can't really fault them for that. But meanwhile, the entire country is suffering under our current government. There's a reason there's term limits in the States. And what's your thoughts on bringing term limits into Canada and making it so that a prime minister can't serve more than 8 years?
I think our system's pretty good the way it is. I know some people would feel you have a leader that you don't like and you want to get rid of, but we've had other prime ministers for as long, and they've been really good. But everyone has a different opinion, so I haven't put a lot of thought into the term limits like the United States. But I am focusing a lot on. I think our country needs a new direction, and so the voters can make a decision going forward.
I think one of the reasons for term limits is it's a firewall against corruption. Because if you've been in long enough, I mean, somebody's going to get to you, and anybody can be corrupted. You put a gun to my kid's head, I'm like, oh, okay. And what did you need? How did you need me to vote?
Yeah.
Anybody can be corrupted, but I think most people can be corrupted with carrots. You don't need the stick. And so, well, we got all these election laws, so there can't be corruption because of campaign contribution limits. It's like, no, there's 1,001 ways to do it. And I've never in my life seen a government more corrupt than the one we have right now. And it's all out in the open, and people just shrug their shoulders and go, meh, so what?
I am surprised by people just accepting or just not interested or not even concerned. And I agree. We're seeing incredible corruption and inefficiencies in spending money that we need to be spent efficiently and not wasted. But yeah, you're right. People can be very complacent and just worried about their own lives when they don't necessarily realize it really is affecting our lives. However, now people are seeing prices of fuel and groceries and cost of living and houses are skyrocketing, and they're starting to ask questions, and people are paying a lot of taxes, and so I'm hoping we'll see in the next federal election an even stronger turnout, and that'll be reflective of people's frustration.
The country's changed so much, especially in places like where you live. I was on Vancouver Island for 2 years, and my memories of Vancouver Island in 92, 93, I mean, what a different place than it is today, and not in a good way. 92, 93, downtown Victoria, Fantan Alley, Market Square, gorgeous, gorgeous, absolutely vibrant. Everybody wanted to be there. It was wonderful. Couple years ago, my wife and I were at an Airbnb at Fantan Alley, and Market Square is dead.
Yeah,
and there's homeless encampments all over the place, and my hypervigilance. Yay, PTSD. Hypervigilance was off the chart, so we had trouble enjoying it, because I watched an overdose. I watched a guy die just as I'm walking down the street. I'm like, oh, that's nice. What a tourist attraction that is. Let's watch some people OD and die.
There's some troubling areas in downtown Victoria, and honestly,
horrific.
You see it in Duncan. For example, there's all kinds of challenges there as well, and it is really horrific. And to be honest, the decriminalization of drugs is been matched, correlated directly with the deaths that we're seeing in British Columbia. We're at about 2,500 a year from overdoses. I mean, it's horrific, and it's touched almost all families. And it's heartbreaking. And Victoria is certainly seeing some challenges. There's still some beautiful parts of Victoria, and I'm happy to say I was at Fantan Alley not too long ago, and it wasn't too bad there. But there are certainly, let's not turn a blind eye. There's some very big challenges in downtown Victoria.
Well, Market Square, as the example, like you remember how vibrant it was.
Yes.
And it's not the same, right? Like it's been deflated by a lot. The shine is gone.
Yeah, the businesses there are some businesses that have been long standing and they've just closed because the costs have come up so high for rent and fuel and for their buying their product, and the sales are just dropping because fewer people are going into town. That's certainly a trend in Victoria. It's a little different in Langford, this being a smaller community, and so it's certainly a lot safer and in Langford.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like Los Angeles. Like you got all these different towns, but you can't see the border. Like when you drive from downtown Victoria to Langford, it's all one city, really. I mean, I guess there's an imaginary line that's the border, but it's all the same.
Yeah,
it's all Victoria, whether you're in Langford or Oak Bay or whatever.
Yeah,
yeah, it's all the same. So what change do you want to bring? If you are the successful member of Parliament, what are your promises to the people of Langford? Like what it is that you're going to try to bring forward?
My job as a politician will be to listen to people and hear what their concerns are and bring those forward. So regardless of somebody's political affiliation or beliefs, that the job of a member of Parliament is to listen and represent his riding. Some issues that are key and important to me is veteran issues. Having been through that process and dealt with Veterans Affairs, I know that there's areas that can be improved, and there's a lot of veterans in the Couch, Malhat, Langford riding. I have been personally touched by some of the crime that's going on, and my daughter's boyfriend was murdered in downtown Victoria a couple of years ago. He died in her arms, and he was attacked by a violent repeat offender who was out on bail and had attempted to murder somebody else a few weeks prior, and that needs to change, and I'm sharing that to say that I understand where some people are coming from and the types of things that the police are having to deal with, and so that bail reform and violent repeat offender being released, and we're hearing that across the country as a really big issue. So that's something that's important to me, and also changing the way that we're helping people with drug addictions and getting recovery, not just safe supply, which is not really safe and really is only part of a solution. And I think that's why we're seeing this incredible numbers of deaths per year in British Columbia and other provinces, of course, as well.
Well, I think you got a pretty good pitch if you are the successful candidate, because if people want to have a voice, let's say somebody's voted orange their whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Say, okay, well, that's great, but do you think NDP is going to form the next federal government? Then you're going to have no voice. So go ahead, vote orange, and then have no voice. If you want a voice, you're going to have to vote blue. And
that's, certainly good logic. Yeah, absolutely.
And to me, that's the whole campaign pitch. The Conservatives are going to win the next election. Like nobody argues this; it's not even close.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you want a voice or not? If you want a voice, I'm for everybody. Orange, blue, red, whatever. I will represent you. But if you're not in government, people think, well, yeah, but my person is still an MP. Are they in government? It's not the same thing. If you're not in it, because you are hamstrung if you're not an MP that's in the government. You're just if you're in the official opposition or or any of the opposition parties, you have no power. You can squawk and flap your arms, but you can't actually do anything. The only way you can do something is if you are in the government that's in power. So if they don't vote, if you don't vote Conservative in your riding, you have no voice.
You'll have less
period.
representation. Because of course the opposition's job is to pressure for accountability and efficiency. But if your member of parliament is in the serving government, then you're going to have better representation. That's certainly a solid argument. And there's a strong environmental movement in our riding, and unfortunately, when it's treated as a single issue, I don't think you can govern a country when the environment is your only concern. And from a conservative perspective, a healthy economy and a safe and secure and healthy population, it will be in a position to better protect the environment than if you exclude everything else just for the environment. Your country's quickly not going to be able to operate efficiently, and your ability to protect the environment will deteriorate, as we're seeing in some other countries with political challenges. When people are hungry and can't keep themselves warm, environment is their last concern. But if you have a healthy, safe population,
and it's so silly. Like if I had hair, I'd pull it out.
Yeah.
Because the stronger the economy, the cleaner the air. The stronger the economy, the cleaner the water. That's how it works anywhere in the world. And it doesn't matter what city that you look at. You look at the economy of that city.
Mm-hmm.
The more the stronger the economy,
mm-hmm.
the less stuff goes in the river or in the air. It's a cleaner environment. A better economy makes a cleaner environment.
Yeah,
it just does.
Absolutely agree, and I wish people would understand that you need a really good balance. You can't run a government on a single issue, and absolutely agree. And I've seen that in countries around the world. Travel to many countries with the Navy, and you see incredible differences in how clean a city might be, and it absolutely is directly tied to their economic well-being, because you can afford to look after the economy, and you can afford to look after the environment, you can afford to look after people, you can afford to treat people, and that's a direction I think that the Conservatives is going to be able to take this country.
Well, it's that's the way I'm going,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm loyal to no party. Over the years, I've voted Green once on a lark, and I was even a member of the NDP at one point in my life.
Yeah, well,
then they pissed me off, and but as I got older and I have a more sophisticated understanding of the landscape, my views adjusted.
Fair enough.
But,
and that's what makes democracy good. You can have a different opinion. You can support a different party. There's nothing wrong with that, and you can adjust your priorities. And I'm glad to see where you are right now. But I totally understand and respect different perspectives and views.
Well, the problem with being a party loyalist is that what happens when your party changes? When your mm-hmm. party changes its values, mm-hmm. and you haven't, well, why are you sticking with that party then?
Yeah.
If that party no longer serves you, or like in Alberta, Albertans do not like corruption, and that's why we can't keep a premier for very long, because we just won't have it.
Fair enough. So you should.
We've burned through so many premiers. The only one that we kept for a good length of time was Ralph Klein, mm-hmm. and it's like, okay, Ralph, we trust you. You're going to get the job done. But Alison Redford, mm-hmm. Blowing all taxpayers' money on renovating her office to some ridiculous degree, stuff like this. Like, we got no time for it.
Yeah.
And oust, you're out, you're not, you're gone, or flying her kids all over the place, on our dime. No, not cool.
Fair enough.
And I think the rest of the country is getting less and less. They're getting more and more fed up with it too. With watching our tax dollars go up in smoke for no reason other than people living high off the hog on our dime. It's not cool. Like, not when there's people on the streets, not when there's problems like there is in downtown Victoria,
Yeah,
or any major center.
absolutely. Any city.
It, the Over the last 10 years, it has gone downhill so bloody far. And if you can't see it, your eyes are shut.
Yeah.
And it's not a global phenomenon. It's policy, and it's easy to fix, but it's you can't ask the arsonist to put out the fire.
I hear you.
Yeah, and that's it. Jeff, anything else on your mind before we wrap up?
No, I really appreciate all the amazing work that you're doing and connecting with veterans. And I've enjoyed chatting with you and meeting you today and sharing a little bit about what I'm doing here on Vancouver Island. And maybe in the future we can reconnect and chat some more about another subject.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Jeff, for joining me. Please stay on the line.
Yeah, take care. Stay safe, my friend.
You're listening to Operation Tango Romeo, the Trauma Recovery Podcast for veterans, first responders, and their families. If you would like to help save a life, share like the sugar bear, because sharing is caring and will help others find this show and the hope that they are looking for. Thanks, everybody.